Welcome, and thank you for joining us for IOFM's virtual demo day. My name's Mark Brousseau, President Brousseau & Associates. I'll be your moderator for today's event. I have just a few housekeeping notes to go over before we start our first product demonstration. If you have any technical questions or issues using the WebEx platform, please use the chat box and someone will respond to you right away. If you have any issues with audio, please click on the phone icon above the chat window to receive the teleconference information. For those of you who do call in, to ensure call quality, everyone's lines have been muted today. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the product demonstration. Please type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them to me. At the end of the product demonstration, I will have our presenter answer your questions. One last important note, this event will not be available on demand. Please plan to attend the sessions that are of interest to you. That webinar confirmation email you received provides you with full day access, and you can come and go as you see fit and your schedule allows. Our first product demonstration today is sponsored by statementmatching.com, and it's presented by Daniel Kimpton. At this time, I'd like to welcome our presenter and hand the demonstration off to Daniel. Daniel, welcome.
Good morning. Hello. Right. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this IOFM Demo Day. And it's, I'm doing a live demo, no PowerPoint slides. And I'm happy to take any questions that anyone in the audience has got. Obviously, like Mark said, drop them in the chat. And I'd love to get questions and we can pick them all up at the end. So what are we going to cover as part of this session? So I'm gonna do a live demo and I'm going to explain how customers use my system to proactively ensure that their accounts payable ledgers are accurate. That's really the key. That's the key driver for my customers. And the key word there is proactive, because anyone in accounts payable knows that it's typically reactive. Invoices turn up, you need to get them processed through to payment, you need to chase people internally to kind of help you do that, and then you're having to respond to supplier queries all the time. Now, what customers, their objective with my system is to really proactively check that their ledgers are accurate. And by that, I mean they get statements from their suppliers and they check the statement against their ERP system and maybe any add-on systems that they've got as well. And they're checking for what's matched, because if it's matched, that's good, we've got it. But I'm going to show you the exceptions. So if you've got invoices or credits that are on the statement, but they're not on your ERP system, I'm going to highlight those. I'm also going to highlight where you've got data errors. So for example, you may have the invoice, but the invoice numbers and the invoice dates are different. So these could be duplicate risks that you want to fix. Also, if you might have mispostings, so invoices that are posted on the wrong vendor's account, for example. So we want to highlight those. And then obviously the key thing is to make sure that you get all of the documents, resolve the errors on a timely basis. And if you can do that, you're going to pay more suppliers on time, which is going to result in fewer queries. And you're going to also maximize the P&L as well, because if you keep on top of your statements, any goods receipts that have not been invoiced and they've got a posting date prior to the statement date, many of my customers have returned many sort of millions of pounds to the bottom line from doing it. So I just wanted to kind of set the scene before we do the demo. But the way it works is this is a cloud-based system. So when I set customers up for the first time, I'm expecting to get effectively their initial data from them. And the initial data contains all of their open invoices and the last 6 months of paid invoices. And that's what we start off with as a base data set. It works with any ERP system. We've got about 80 customers globally, and they're on every ERP system that you can think of, and many of them are kind of bespoke old ones that you may or may not have heard of, and all the main ERP systems as well. And then we stay in sync with the customer. So every day I get a daily file from all of my customers, and that just contains new invoices and any invoices that have changed. So for example, the status might have changed. So it's just a Delta file. Nobody in accounts payable sees this. It's just a background process. And the cool thing about getting data every day into statement matching is it will re-reconcile any statements that are in the system already. You know, which is a big benefit compared to your manual process, because as anyone knows that reconcile statements, if you, as soon as I've done it, it's out of date as of tomorrow because it's a moving feast. So the statements keep getting reworked in statement matching, and it updates all of the statuses. The second part of the process, and this is really key, is you get statements from suppliers. You know, typically most of them are coming in via email these days, and you are getting lots of different formats. So you're getting Excel statements from suppliers, and that could be in any layout. It's whatever the supplier gives you. You'll also be getting lots of PDF statements from suppliers as well. And again, that's going to be in whatever format the supplier gives you. And there's no point telling them to try and do something different, because they either won't or they can't, or if they do, they'll get it wrong. So the way it works is customers continue receiving the statements from the suppliers, you know, as they do today. And the ones they want to reconcile, they just forward to an email address that I give them. And then as part of the service, we extract the data from the Excels and the PDFs, and then they're on statement matching, reconciled, ready for you to look at. So from a process point of view, accounts payable are simply forwarding the statements on. And if you have a dedicated mailbox, for example, where all of your statements, you know, go into from suppliers, then you could just set that inbox to redirect to us, and you know, you don't even have to forward them. And then what the system does is it reconciles the statement, and it gives each statement like an overall status, which is what you see in the first section. And then it gives a status for each line on the statement as well. So I'll explain what these are, and then I'll get into showing you some examples so that you can see what it looks like for the user and what it looks like for the supplier. So fully matched, this is what you want to see, because, you know, tying it back to what we're trying to achieve is to check that the ledgers are accurate. And if you've got fully matched statements, that means they are accurate, because all of the invoices that are on the statement are on your ERP system, and everything matches perfectly. So there's no exceptions. So everyone's, you know, very happy when they get fully matched statements. And what customers do with them, two things is, first of all, they would send a copy of the report to the supplier to say, right, I've reconciled your statement. All of these, you know, there might be some that are due for payment, so there'll be a due date, and some of them might be paid already, so there'll be a paid date and also a payment reference, like a checking number. So the idea is to send a report to the supplier, because, you know, guess what? Typically, what they're sending you queries about are, you know, have you got my invoice? When are you going to pay me? And we're actually giving them that information on the report. Now, later on in the demo, I'm also going to show you how suppliers can have self-service access as well, because you can give suppliers access to like a self-service portal, where actually they can go and see the status of their invoices on a portal. They can look at payments, they can see what invoices are in each payment, and they can submit messages as well, which come into your existing query process. So it's kind of an optional thing. Not all customers use the portal, but it is possible to give suppliers access. And again, it's all about giving the suppliers access to the information that they would normally be sending you a query about. The other thing with fully matched statements is this ties in with the goods received not invoiced account that I mentioned earlier. So, you know, if you think about it, you've got a fully matched statement, you've got all the invoices, and it also means you've got no open invoices on the vendor's account that are dated before the last invoice date on the statement. So the significance of those is the team that looks after the GRNI, you know, and obviously you're always trying to minimize balances in there. If a vendor that's got a fully matched statement has got any goods receipts that have not been invoiced and the posting date is prior to the statement date, then in theory you could go and clear them down and return them to profit. And this has been a big driver for my customers who are purchase order driven, is to try and reduce their aged GRNI balances. So I'm not going to show you one of them on the demo because it's just, you know, it's just all ticked off. But these next three is where the exceptions are. So fully matched with data mismatches, that means you've got all the invoices, but there are some errors. So for example, I've got some where the invoice numbers are different, invoices and credits the wrong way around, currency issues, and I've got some where the amounts are different. So you're going to want to go and investigate them and resolve them before you pay the supplier. Again, the whole proactive thing. And then third one down, unpaid items missing on statement. So that means you've got invoices that are on the vendor's account, unpaid, but they're not on the vendor's statement. So if they're not open on the vendor's side, but it's on the vendor account on your side, then it could be a misposting. So posted to the wrong vendor account, for example, or it could be a duplicate. But either way, we're spotting it before it's paid, so you want to go and fix it. And then lastly, and really this is everyone's top priority, wherever you are in the world, these are the ones that customers tend to want to resolve as quickly as possible. So incomplete matching, that means that you've got invoices or credits that are on the statement, but they're not on your ERP system. So missing invoices, missing credits. And with the achievement laws in the US in particular, you know, my US customers are very interested in, you know, prioritizing the statements where there's missing credits, you know, because of achievement. And you can actually reconcile, you can follow up the exceptions in a sequence if you want, because some issues are bigger than others. So for example, I've got a missing credits report on the dashboard. And then if I run it, it's basically going to give me a list of statements where I've got missing credits, because maybe I want to follow them up first before I then resolve the other issues. Right, so it should have hopefully refreshed on your side, and you can see it sorts them by value. So, you know, I've got the biggest missing credit at the top of the list, and then from here, I can actually drill into the detail. Now, this screen that you're looking at here is really where accounts payable users spend most of their time. So this is what the reconciliation looks like. It's really simple. So I've got the supplier's statement data on the left-hand side. And then on the right-hand side, I've got the data from your ERP system, from the accounts payable ledger. And you can see, you know, a lot of these invoices are matched, but I do have two that are missing. Well, I've got a missing credit halfway down, and then I've got a missing invoice at the bottom. So typically what customers would do at this point is they would want to contact the supplier. There's different ways of doing it. You can email the supplier from statement matching directly. So the email from address would be one of your email addresses. So any replies obviously come back to you. If we get email addresses from your vendor records as part of our daily feed, it would plumb in the email address for you, and then you put a subject and message. And then you either choose to send a full report, which is going to show everything, what's matched as well as missing, or some customers only want to send, you know, basically the errors, which in this case would be the missing credit, missing invoice. But to be fair, most customers send the full report because the idea is to give the supplier as much information as possible. Now, so I'm not going to bother emailing myself as part of the demo, but I'll explain also that you can download the PDF from statement matching and send it from your own email system, which is what a lot of customers do because you know, they prefer it from their own email, so they've got a sent item, they've got their signature and disclaimers on it. So, but whichever way you do it, basically the supplier gets an email, and this is what it looks like for the supplier. So this is personalized, where the statement matching logo is. This would be your logo. And you can see it's nicely laid out for the supplier. I'm basically saying that all of your invoices are matched. I've got some that are ready to pay. I've got some that are in process, and you can see I've got due dates, and also I've got one that's paid as well. So I've got a paid date and a check-in number. And the lines that are missing, I'm basically giving the supplier a clear instruction to please send a copy to this email address. So that's something that you can set in the system, some default text. And also these status descriptions, this is just what I've got set on my demo system. You know, I'm using in process as a bit of a catch-all. That could be in error, and it could be on a workflow. It could be posted with a payment block, but I don't want the supplier to kind of I just want them to know that I'm working on it. So I'm using in process as a bit of a catch-all, but that's kind of, that's configurable. So that's what the supplier sees. You can also download the same data to Excel. So some of my customers like Excel because, they're in finance, everyone loves Excel. Excel is also editable. So some people like to color code things and change the format around, or you might want to add additional notes on certain lines. So the Excel is editable, the PDF is fixed. The other thing that you can do on the system, again, managing the follow-up process, is I've just requested the documents from the supplier. Now, next month, I might get a new statement from the supplier. And if these documents are missing still, I want to know that actually the previous month I requested the missing documents. So what we tell people to do when we do the training is actually add notes in the system, because it pulls the notes forward. So if I look at a statement next month and these documents are missing, it'll actually pull any notes forward that you added to the previous month's statement. And there are notes in here because the icon's blue. So if I'd been a proper accounts payable user, I might have looked at these first before requesting the missing documents, basically for a third time, because you can see I did it once, I did it twice, and I've just done it again. So you can actually add notes. We've also got something called user status as well. So this is something that you can define as a customer. There's like a table in the system where you can set any number of these. Again, this is just my demo system. Lots of customers have a big list in here. So the way they use it is sometimes if you're working in a team and you're responsible for your own vendors, there's always the same problem with the same vendor, mark it up as a problem. Because you might have a team internally that kind of looks at, well, let's have a look at where are my issues, with my suppliers. They look at continuous improvement. If you mark these up as problems, you can find out, well, what's the issue? Maybe the supplier, if they've got missing invoices all the time, they're sending it to the wrong email address, or their emails are getting bounced, or they're sending it to site first. But rather than just deal with the issues every month, is to kind of, again, be proactive about it. And you can see, I could have it out on a query internally, maybe with purchasing or something, or out with the vendor. And I've got one for, requested a copy, which is what I've just done. And then if I go to the search page, so this is typically how a shared service center customer would use the system. They would use this search page to basically select the statements that they're responsible for. So we tend to see that, the work split sometimes by region. So if it's a shared service center, there might be a country or a region, and there might be these companies in there, so basically legal entities. So that's what company ID is. So I might be responsible for certain companies, and then within those companies, I might be responsible for certain suppliers. So based on the alphabet, for example. And there are also other ways to associate accounts payable users with vendors on statement matching, so that when they come in here, they only look at the statements that they need to. So we work that out on the project. Now, the other thing people do is, going back to this user status, I'm going to say, well, just show me all of the statements where I've requested a copy, because, I might want to follow these up at the end of the month or the end of the period to see, well, have I still got any outstanding, where I've requested a missing document. And I can see I have got one that's still incomplete. So the vendor's basically ignoring me, and I might want to go and do, a tougher sort of course of action. But you can see I have got two that are fully matched. So obviously I've requested the missing invoice, the supplier sent it in, that's come into the ERP system, and then in the daily file, it's come into statement matching, and now basically everything is matched. So again, this is about being proactive, following up the exceptions. I'll just go back to the search as well. Now, I don't really want to see the fully matched ones. There's no exceptions as such there. So you can also select by status. And then if you hit search, it's basically going to give you a list of statements to work on. And this can be tailored based on your user preferences. So if you want to reorder the columns, some people sort them by statement date or statement value, work on the big ones first. So I've got one, I'll show you this one next, which is fully matched with data mismatches. So that means it's found everything, but there are some errors in the data. And It's a fairly hefty statement, this one. So I'm only displaying 25 rows on the page, and there's 19 pages worth of invoices in here. So what you do with the bigger ones is actually put a filter on. So you can say, well, just show me the ones where there's a problem. And then it gives me a list. So if you look closely, you know, these errors on the demo system are deliberate. You know, we do see these a lot with customers. If you look at the first example, it's an invoice on the statement for 105.78, but it's on the ERP system with an extra 1. So it's $1,000 out. It's not paid, it's ready to pay. So I would want to go and, you know, fix that. The next one is a really big problem because it's basically a credit on the statement, but it's on the ERP system as an invoice, because I think, you know, you're very used to kind of processing invoices all day. You know, you can be on autopilot sometimes, and then it's not always obvious something's a credit. And then it can end up, yeah, on the system. So it's basically a double hit. And then you can see I've got more where the amounts are different. So what you would do in practice is you would fix the problems on your ERP system. We would get the changes in the daily file. This statement would get re-reconciled, and then it would update all of the statuses to be matched. If you don't fix it, obviously it will remain in error, so that hopefully you fix it next time. And because we've got these errors, we can actually quantify them. You know, so I, as a manager, I want to know, well, you know, show me the vendors where I've got, you know, different types of issue, because there might be a problem. You know, if the amounts are wrong all the time, is it a purchase order issue, or, you know, maybe it's a catalog issue, the prices are out of date. But again, going back to the whole proactive thing, statement matching does feed into helping the whole continuous improvement loop. But yeah, basically fix the root cause. Now, the third example that I wanted to show was where you've got invoices that are on the ledger, but they're not on the statement. So we'll have a look at this one. So everything on the statement is matched, which is great, but we have an entry in this section. So we basically got an unmatched section. And if you look at this, for this supplier, I've got an invoice for 286.80, which is dated in February. And it's open on the vendor's account, you know, unpaid. And then if you look on the vendor's statement, it looks like a regular amount that we get from this supplier. I've got one in March, one in April, but the Feb one's not in his statement. So this is probably a duplicate. So, but again, we've spotted it in time, and we can go and reverse it so that we don't end up paying the duplicate and then having a more expensive recovery process. So I hope that makes sense. Now, the other thing I've got time to show, I've got lots of reporting on the system. I'm not going to dwell on the reporting too much, because, you know, it's just a demo system. The reporting is not too excited, but just to show you what we've got, what a lot of my customers use is this critical supplier report. So often customers, from a reconciliation point of view, they'll have a list of suppliers which are key. They might be preferred suppliers, they could be high volume, high value, they could just be noisy vendors. So basically you put them on a list, and then you can mark them up as critical in statement matching, so that as a manager, I want to make sure, I'll probably check midway through the month, well, have I had a statement from all my critical suppliers? Yes or no? And then chase up the ones who haven't sent a statement in yet. And then at the end of the month, I want to make sure that all of my critical suppliers have sent a statement, and they're all set to complete, which means one of the users is basically finished. So people like the critical supplier report. You've got sort of high-level reports as well, where you can look at the number of statements you received, you know, by month, by vendor. You can quantify the different errors. So how many invoices were missing? What was the value? How many invoices had data errors? What was the value? And so on. And then you've got, I showed you the missing credits report earlier. You've got the same type of report for missing invoices, and then the other error types, because again, you can quantify them, but also some customers follow them up in a sequence. But what I wanted to show you quickly was the Supplier Portal. Now, I've been talking for a while, so it might have logged me out. Let's have a look. This is optional. Not all of my customers use the portal. But those who do basically invite their suppliers via email to say, we've got this great new portal. You can come and log in. You can see the status of your invoices. You can view payments and do all of these other great things. It's free of charge for the supplier. All they do is they get a link. It takes them to a login page. They enter their password for the first time, and then they can then view their documents. And they can only view documents, based on their vendor number and email address. So if I go to my invoices, so even the slowest of suppliers might figure out that if I go to my invoices, I might see a list of invoices. So it's a nice simple layout. And again, like we saw on the statement matching side for accounts payable, I've got some invoices that are in process, ready to pay. I've got due dates. If any of them were paid, there would be a payment reference like a check-in number and also a paid date. So it's just a really nice, simple view for the supplier to basically, check the status of their invoices. Now, if they've got a big invoice that they're really keen to get paid, they can enter an invoice number in this search box. They can also enter a check-in number, and then it would list the invoices that are in that payment. So it's really user-friendly. I'm in accounts receivable on the supplier side now, so they might want to export it to Excel, and they might want to reconcile it against their sales ledger, so they can export it to Excel. And you can also, you don't have to have this switched on, but you can let them submit messages against the documents. So you can see this little envelope icon, and what that, I won't open it because it's going to start. In Outlook. And just get rid of that. Sorry. All that does is it opens an email on the supplier side. So whether they use Outlook or whatever email client, it basically opens an email, and in the subject, it's got the vendor number and the invoice number that message relates to, and the email address is default. So it would basically be your query inbox. And if you're global and you've got multiple email addresses based on country, you can basically use the default email address can be based on the company code of the invoice that they're submitting a message against. So it basically just brings queries into your existing process. They can also look at payments as well. So if I list the payments, I've only got 2 payments on my demo system. If I select one, it's basically going to tell me, well, for this payment of $3175, you had these 2 invoices that are in. So again, this is all about, this is helping the supplier reconcile their side, reconcile their payments to clear their invoices down correctly, and ultimately reducing queries for you. Now, there are also options for suppliers to send their own statements. So if you can get suppliers to do it, suppliers can actually upload a statement via the application and actually reconcile their own account. So if we look at some statements that we've already got in here, so this is what the supplier would have imported. The supplier gets really a similar view to what you saw on the accounts payable side. So there's lots of problems with this supplier statement. They've been sending you invoices, you put them on your system as credits. There's some that are missing, all sorts of issues. But we've kind of gone through what the reconciliations look like. I'm just showing that actually you can do this from the supplier's side. And of course, you would see all of these issues as well. So you would be alerted to them. And then the other thing we've got this send invoices function. Now, this is not a portal where you can submit electronic invoices, do PO flip or anything like that. We're not, there's lots of other systems that do that. The send invoices function is really, I've got 3 documents that are missing on this statement. And as a supplier, I can obviously go and email them from my ERP system the same way as I do. But we've got like a send invoices function, which while they're on the portal, maybe they can just go in here and they can, the email address is grayed out. So that's your email address that you use for invoice submission. And then you can basically attach the files. So it's quite simple. I whizzed through that, but I obviously wanted to leave lots of time for questions at the end. But hopefully I've given you a good overview of the system. Yeah, I'd obviously love to do one-to-one demo with anyone who's interested. We do proof of concepts as well. So you can give me data for up to 10 suppliers or more if you need to, give you access to a live system. And actually it kind of comes to life when you see it with your own data. So yeah, really happy to do that. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining today. And I'm going to hand back to Mark for Q&A.
Righto, we're now moving into the Q&A portion of this product demonstration. If you haven't already asked your question for Daniel, or if you've thought any additional questions for Daniel, go ahead, type your questions into the chat box and hit send to submit them to me now. We'll answer as many questions as time allows. Our first question is from Lori. She wants to know what's involved in integrating this with our ERP.
So from an ERP perspective, it works with any ERP system. So what we do if a customer is going to go ahead, is we give them a data requirements specification. So this basically says we need this data from the invoice header tables, this data from the supplier tables, these ones are required, these ones are optional, that kind of thing. So it's like a spec. And then they have their IT department, or whoever it is, basically create a data extract on their ERP system that meets the requirements. And generally, it's pretty. Once you get to the top of the queue with IT, which is that's always the bit that takes the time. It's pretty easy for them to do because we're really holding, relatively small amounts of data because the data that you get on a supplier statement is quite minimal. So what we need from the ERP system is quite minimal. But I can provide like a data requirement spec for anyone that's interested. But yeah, we have literally done everything from your SAPs, your Oracles, Lawson's, JD Edwards, PeopleSoft, Dynamics, all of those down to, really old sort of bespoke systems.
That actually brings us to a question from Erica. She writes, does this work with PeopleSoft 9.2?
Yes, it does. Yeah, we've got plenty of customers on PeopleSoft. Oh, and I should also add with regards to integration with the ERP system, Mark, is quite important. It's actually a one-way. There's no connection back from statement matching to the customer's ERP, which is important because that makes it more difficult for them to get approval to do something. Like from security perspective, because all they're doing is basically outputting files from their ERP system, pushing them to an FTP account, and then they get imported into statement matching, and we don't write anything back. So it's a good thing for people to know.
Rochelle wants to know, are the reason codes configurable, i.e. the actions that need to be taken?
They are, yes. The user status, I think we were referring to when we looked at the example with missing credits. This one here. So this user status is completely controllable. So it's your words, it's your sequence. You can have what you like in here. The status descriptions on the actual reconciliation, there are standard ones, and you can also add your own. So, for example, I've got different ones in here, like manual match. I've got match because it's an ERS vendor, and manually match consolidated lines. So you can there's standard ones, but you can also set your own.
Carrie writes, does this work with Basware?
Basware, yes, it does. It does work with Basware. Now, lots of our customers use, whether it's Basware or other third-party solutions, but they have basically add-on solutions where invoices might go first before they actually hit the ledger. So for those customers, I end up getting data from Basware as well as the ERP system. Or sometimes we would only get get all of the data from Basware because the invoice starts in Basware, and then when it goes to the ERP system to get paid, the ERP system updates the document in Basware to basically status of paid. And at that point, it means I only actually need data from Basware, which makes it a lot simpler. So it depends on how the customer's got it set up. But yeah, whether it's Basware or any of the other add-ons, yeah, we've done lots of different ones.
Luis wants to know, what are the key components of a business case for this type of solution?
So typically business case, we have some customers where they're reconciling thousands of statements a month, got X number of FTEs doing it. And some of them are looking to reduce FTEs, and obviously that's part of the business case. But I would say that's very seldom the case. Typically, my customers are justifying the investment because they're either not reconciling anywhere near the volume of statements that they would ideally want to. They're not doing them proactively. So really, it's about being able to reconcile high volumes of statements, without increasing headcount and i.e. cost. And then we always link in with reducing queries. So if you can reconcile all of your top vendors every month and share the results, you will reduce queries. And again, that's lots of time and effort saved on the vendor help desk and whatever department deals with the supplier queries.
From Louise to Lorraine, she wants to know what IT resources are required to deploy the system, and about how long does it take?
Well, that's really on the customer side, because if I get sent data tomorrow from a customer's production system, I would have the system up and running, and I would be offering to do training next week. So it is very, very quick once you give me the data. Now, to get the data from the customer's ERP system, accounts payable are often at the back of the queue, so they have to get in the whole, they have to get approval, then they have to get in the IT queue. It can be anything. It can be days or it could be weeks. We've had some customers where it's taken 6 months because, accounts payable will take a long time to bubble up the priority queue. But when they actually get around to doing the work, from an IT resource perspective, it's like hours of work. It's just the time it takes to actually get to the top of their work queue. But I think probably that will resonate with, anyone who's been at their company long enough and gone through projects. Poor old accounts payable, they're never getting any attention, do they, Mark?
Not for anything good. Sherry wants to know, are there configurable workflows in this solution?
No, there's no workflows. But people do use this user status as kind of a workflow. So I'll give you an example. I'm a clerk in accounts payable, or accounts payable associate. There might be a process where I reconcile the statement. So I do the initial review. So for example, I've got first review. And then what then happens, say this is the beginning of the month, towards the end of the month, I would then basically go and select all of the statements which I've put as first review, and then I would basically check it again. So have the issues been resolved, yes or no? If they haven't, follow them up again. And then I would basically do a second review. And this is a bit over the top, but then you might have key vendors where actually the manager needs to check it. So the manager would pick them up and basically, you've got something for approval. So it's not workflow, but people kind of use this to sort of do the same thing.
Another question from an attendee. They want to know what sort of invoice volume is typical for your customers?
There's no typical really. We have literally got customers who process 20,000 invoices a year, up to customers that process 5 million invoices a year, and anywhere kind of in between. I would say, probably the sweet spot, like the minimum sweet spot, is most customers are processing a minimum of 150,000 invoices a year, typically. And then a big range, up to 5 million. So yeah, volume is not a problem.
Yeah, so what are some signs of a company who might be a good candidate for your solution, Daniel? What are some telltale signs of somebody who probably ought to be giving you a call?
Well, I think a lot of companies now, because they've done in accounts payable, a lot of big companies have done all their invoice automation projects. They've done electronic invoicing, they've done portals. It's very automated. They might be on their second, third, fourth generation of doing it. But actually the bit at the end, reconciling statements, is the bit that people haven't done. And I think we're getting more and more people realize that actually I should be reconciling more statements. I should be doing it proactively because it checks that my ledgers are correct. So I've got lots of people where they've not been doing it, but they know they should be. And obviously they're going to need automation unless they just want to employ lots of people. And then I've got the other people who have got homegrown solutions, but they're not great. They get them to a kind of point, and again, they get to the point where they think there must be a better way of doing it, and we get a lot of those customers. But to be honest, it's anyone in accounts payable that is processing 100,000 invoices or above. They'll be getting statements, and they should be reconciling them. And the costs are pretty low. We haven't done costs on the call, but the costs are pretty low. There's no setup cost. It's a low monthly subscription. Anyone who wants to pick up pricing, I'm happy to pick that up individually, as a follow-up.
Carrie says, tell me more about the standard reports available in the system and what type of reporting tools are available for those reports you don't already provide.
Right. So currently the reports that we've got in the system are fixed. So the reports that you see on my screen now, this is what you get. And if you run the missing credits report, it's pretty much just, it gives you a list. These fields are fixed. You can print it to PDF or export it to Excel. Okay, so I would say the reporting is something that we're doing a big development on in 2021. Now the core system is really stable, really works. We've got a lot of people using it, and what we're going to be doing is moving all of the reporting onto Power BI. So anyone using Microsoft, this is all going to be Power BI. So there'll be a lot more visual. You'll have dashboards, you'll have graphs and pies, and you can actually we're going to give people the ability to actually configure their own reports. But that's next year. But what you see is what you get currently.
So Sheila wants to know, who's the typical user of your solution? An AP clerk, a business analyst, someone else?
Yeah, it depends on the size of company. So it's accounts payable clerk is common, but you also, the bigger companies have got vendor help desks. So you have people on the vendor help desk that are fielding queries from suppliers, and they'll often be the ones that are receiving statements, probably as well as accounts payable. So accounts payable clerks, vendor help desk people, and then also business analysts as well, like you said, because the reconciling the statement actually gives you a lot of insights into how good is my AP process, how accurate it is. So actually you do get analysts using the system because it kind of gives them the data about where the issues are, and is it with a vendor or is it my problem?
All right, so if somebody wants to get one of these one-on-one demonstrations, how do they go about doing that, Daniel?
So I'm not sure if an email is going out as a follow-up to the demo day, Mark.
It will.
Out to everyone, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they can either email me directly, and they can go to the website. So I'm on statementmatching.com, and you can book a live demo directly via the website. So you can pick a time of your choice, and yeah, we'd love to. It takes about 45 minutes to do an end-to-end, and we can finish it off. We can show you how the pricing works. We can show you how the POC works.
Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for an excellent product demonstration today. That's all the time we have for this product demonstration. I have just a few housekeeping notes to go over before we officially close out and transition into our next product demo. If you could please fill out the short evaluation form that will appear once you close out at today's event, that will help us better serve your needs in future virtual demo days. As a reminder, this event will not be available on demand. Please plan to attend the sessions that are of interest to you. That webinar confirmation email you received, it provides you with full day access, and you can come and go as you see fit and your schedule allows. Thank you again to Daniel for an excellent product demonstration today, and thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy days to join us. This demonstration was brought to you by IOFM, and it was sponsored by StatementMatching.com. Up next,